Good morning. Welcome to today's public comment period for our regular board cycle of meetings. We've changed the time for this meeting to 8 o'clock so that we can complete our agenda. We're going to have a full day today, and we're going to work right through lunch, right up until the public meeting at 1:30. So we have 6 speakers with us today. Each speaker will permit it up to 3 minutes for comment with a verbal prompt provided to assist with the timekeeping. While we are open to topics included in our agenda for discussion, there are a few items that are not permitted as items for public expression. These include issues under negotiation as part of the university's collective bargaining process, the employment status of any specific individual, statements concerning the private activities, lifestyles, or beliefs of individuals employed by or associated with the university, grievances of individual students or employees, proposals or bids for contracts, or pending or threatened litigation involving the university. As I introduce each speaker, I would ask that you please come to the podium to make your remarks. Our first speaker, Penn State alumna Wendy Silverwood, has asked to speak about this strategic plan. Wendy?
Chair, before we begin, sorry for the interruption.
The mic is only on Steve and the public.
That's okay. As we discussed the other night, might I suggest that you let it be known that from time to time, the public comment speaking period may change depending on our agenda, so that folks don't think we're trying to exclude them from being able to attend by having it at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I'll make that more clear.
Thank you.
So we have an obligation to have the public comment to the Board of Trustees, and we will continue to do that. Depending on our board agenda, it will be dependent on what time we do that. So So we'll look at our board agenda and we'll incorporate that periodically, and it could change. So I'm not saying that 8 o'clock is a fixed time. If it, when we can do it at the end of our meeting, typically 11:30, that we would break for lunch, go into our public session. That appeared to be more convenient when we're up at University Park. For this particular meeting, because of what we want to get accomplished, it worked better for us to have the flow at 8 o'clock this morning. So, but it's a good point. You'll get, the public speakers will get an opportunity a week in advance, and we'll have it, the time locked in at that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
At the core of any community is its values, the shared ideals about how people should act toward one another, the standards to which we hold ourselves, and those beliefs we find important. I wanted to address 2 of these Penn State core values out of the 6 that are published. Integrity. We act with integrity and honesty in accordance with the highest academic, professional, and ethical standards. Conversely, the integrity, professional, and ethical standards of individuals within our former Office of Attorney General ran counter to those of the university. Frank Fina was the star prosecutor in that office, the guy who made Governor Corbett's career. Fina, along with other officials, including those involved with the Sandusky case, are caught up in what we now know as Porngate and Hategate. Among the hardcore pornography Fina circulated from his office, much of it included women engaged in anal sex, oral sex, and group sex. Images of women being violated with various objects. Recall that Prosecutor Fina supervised that inflammatory grand jury presentment indicting Tim Curley and Gary Schultz with failing to report a crime of violation. A crime acoustically and physically impossible is described and later borne out as untrue by evidence and testimony to a jury in the courtroom. Yet nevertheless, the media has repeated this singular lie as if it were the unassailable truth. Prosecutors have a license to lie. It is not a stretch to see who was behind that lie. Not once has Penn State ever paused to reflect on the established ethics, honesty, and integrity of Tim, Gary, Graham, and Joe. Instead, you chose to question and disbelieve. Perhaps you should seriously question the ethics,
1 minute remaining.
honesty, and integrity of Frank Fina. Respect. We respect and honor the dignity of each person and embrace civil discourse. Civil discourse ceased the moment John Surma stepped over Steve Garvin's body to axe Joe in an ill-timed, late-night press conference carrying out a personal vendetta. Civil discourse was replaced by verbal and physical harassment, death threats, vandalism, and horribly flawed, sensationalist reporting in a media stampede. Respecting the honor and dignity of Joe, Tim, Gary, Graham, the lettermen, the student athletes, and the Penn State community at large vaporized when a former prosecutor, with a license to lie, indicted and smeared us all on July 12, 2012. Fina and Free chose to dishonor by selectively leaking to the media, even including a few board members, to carry out their deeds. I ask that you respect and restore that honor to these people and their families, and you insist on civil discourse by the media and the public. Frank Fina and his fellow gunslingers in the Office of Attorney General reigned with fear and intimidation. It meant there were no holds barred on anybody who worked there. These same prosecutorial bullying tactics were used to silence and discredit Tim Curley and Gary Schultz, suppressing evidence, falsely charging them, and corruptly cooking up a scheme to charge Graham Spanier. Appallingly, your own general counsel helped with that deception. Frank Fina's email scandal of Hategate and Porngate has ripped open a constitutional crisis in our Commonwealth. It has exposed a network that ascribes to core values of intimidation, misconduct, malfeasance, dishonesty, and deceit, a set of values that are antithetical to the values of Penn State, values that have destroyed lives, livelihoods, and reputations, and shaken the very core of the community. Is this our new standard? Thank you.
Also requesting to speak about the strategic plan, I'll ask Steve Masters, also a Penn State alum, to address the board.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the board. When you find that you've dug yourself into a hole and don't know how to extricate yourself, the advice of crisis management experts would be to put down the shovel. You, as the Board of Trustees, have dug yourself into a hole based on your response to what has been the worst crisis in the university's history. The crisis started in November 2011 and is still going strong. The crisis has legs and won't be over until the truth is known. When this saga is over, it will be a cautionary tale of what not to do in a time of crisis. At the outset, you panicked and fired President Graham Spanier and football coach Joe Paterno for no good reasons. You commissioned what has turned out to be a sham investigative report and then accepted its findings without review. You admitted fault and accepted claims and penalties without any clear evidence of wrongdoing and before culpability had been established. You have blocked all attempts at transparency, including taking all possible legal steps to delay the day of reckoning. Your story is slowly unraveling and has received adverse court rulings in several cases. The alumni BOT has won access to the free report source materials, and the lack of backup material to support the conclusions will soon be evident. Superior Court Justice Mary Jane Bowes, in quashing the most serious charges against Spanier, Curley, and Schultz, found that Cynthia Baldwin breached attorney-client privilege and that prosecutor Frank Fina's questioning of her was highly improper when Baldwin testified before the grand jury. It's only a question of time before Spanier, Curley, and Schultz are exonerated. In the Corman versus NCAA case, the NCAA sanctions upon which were based on a free report were all thrown out. It now appears that the university is going to have to pay handsomely for both the damages based on the factually challenged conclusions in the free report, as well as for damages caused because the free report is wrong. Clearly, you have not been looking out for the best interest of the university and have failed miserably in your fiduciary responsibilities of protecting the university from unnecessary expenses. I implore you to, one, finally put down the shovel and do what you should have done in 2012 and do an objective review of the free report. Secondly, I'd like you to do a retrospective analysis of how this crisis was mismanaged so that the mistakes that were made will never happen again. Thirdly, I'd like you to honor Joe Paterno's legacy for his 61 years of exemplary service on this, the 50th anniversary of his hiring as head football coach, and find a way to memorialize his contributions to the university in a way that befits his accomplishments. And lastly, I would like you to issue apologies to Graham Spanier, Tim Curley, Gary Schultz, and their families for the deplorable way that you have treated them. Thank you.
Sandy Lane has asked to address the board on the university's future.
Although there are a myriad of issues to be addressed, I feel the ongoing issue of November 2011 needs to be settled regarding Penn State's past, present, and future. Here we are over 4 years later, and you have yet to remotely acknowledge the horrendous lies that were bestowed upon Joe Paterno, Tim Curley, Graham Spanier, and Gary Schultz. Instead, the entire issue was left without comment, and to this day still left without comment, by you so-called leaders of Penn State, which resulted in a complete and total rush to judgment. I'm going to revisit the word respect. The definition of respect is a deep admiration for someone or something elicited by someone's abilities, qualities, or achievements. Let's start with admiration. Should you, the board here today, and the 2011 BOT be admired? I do not admire one of you, with exceptions. Abilities. Should you and the 2011 BOT be respected regarding your abilities? Well, your proven leadership abilities in handling the events of 2011 were, and still are, abysmal, to say the least. Qualities. Should you and the 2011 BOT be respected for your qualities? Excuse me. One of the most apparent qualities you people have is to enrich yourself. Achievements. Should you and the 2011 BOT be respected for your achievements? As an example, your achievements for overspending speaks volumes, and your achievements for doing for each other is quite apparent. Do you and the 2011 BOT feel you earned respect by the way you and the 2011 trustees handled and continue to handle the worst situation in the history of Penn State? After all, there was never any respect shown by the BOT then and now to Joe Paterno, Tim Curley, Graham Spanier, or Gary Schultz, or Penn State. In conclusion, I'm going to say something for which I will never regret. Shame on you. Shame on you 2011 trustees and the seated trustees, the trustees seated today and the seated trustees in November of 2011, as well as your puppets, past and present, who continue with your egregious efforts. You are lying, corrupt, unethical, ruthless, diabolical bastards. And go Graham Spanier.
Kelly Hoover, a Penn State faculty member, has requested to address the board on components of the university's strategic plan.
Good morning. I've been on the faculty in the College of Ag at Penn State for almost 18 years, and I've worked on a lot of strategic plans. We have commendable goals in our strategic plan to lead in the areas of sustainability and stewarding the planet's resources, with a major goal of protecting our precious water resources. Yet Penn State must walk the walk and not just talk the talk. The university has been moving in a direction that is the antithesis of this vision by agreeing to sell land to the Toll Brothers for luxury student housing on land that houses the Thomas Harder well fields. These wells filter most of the drinking water in the State College region. The way this development plan was approved has become a high-profile test case for Penn State and municipalities, setting several bad precedents for how development proposals should be considered. This process has been fraught with lack of transparency, consultants paid by the developer to gauge the risks to our water, personnel asked to make recommendations who are afraid to speak up for fear of losing their jobs, leading the Ferguson Township supervisors to approve this development in a manner that was frankly more political than fact-based. And the residents and voters know it. In the rush to get this plan approved right after the November election, 3 seats on the board, the only 3 that were up for election that year, in November, were lost to candidates that campaigned against this development. So we had 3 people join the board who were against the development. The board approved the plan before those people got seated, putting the stormwater retention ponds in a plot of land zoned rural agriculture, which is illegal, which opened the door to a lawsuit. This suit is likely to return the plan to the zoning board, so there is an opening right now for an independent study to assess the geology and hydrology of this land to nail down the risks. The approval is a hot-button issue in the State College region and was passed despite a unanimous vote to disapprove the plan by the Planning Commission and the will of the voters and the residents. There are reasons to be concerned about the risks to our water. The wells are shallow, only 20 feet deep, and the ground is bedrock and karst limestone, which doesn't filter runoff. The dam to retain stormwater is not going to stop heavy runoff or flooding during hard rains. We have a prestigious agricultural college, so why would a land-grant university swallow up farmland for development that will increase flooding downslope, putting 150-year-old family farms out of business? Does Penn State want this as part of their legacy? If Penn State has to sell this land, find a more trustworthy developer or a more suitable project that is in line with the strategic goals of Penn State. Toll Brothers has paid millions of dollars in fines for violating stormwater management ordinances all over the country with no change in behavior. So why is Penn State putting luxury student housing that most students can't afford far from campus in a sensitive wellhead area anyway? The community will hold Penn State liable if the water becomes contaminated. We encourage the university to work with us and find a better option for this land. If more student housing is needed, make it affordable and close to campus. This would be a more sustainable solution and go a long way toward restoring the public's faith in how Penn State treats the community.
Johan Swart has asked to address the board on the issue of student housing and energy.
Dear Board of Trustees, President and staff, my name is Johan Swart. I'm living at 420 South Burroughs in State College. I hope you all had a good night's sleep in Hershey. I left this morning at 5 a.m. to get in time for the public hour. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I hope you had your coffee. I had the pleasure of writing you all a letter in June 11 about a Toll Brother development. As I like to do, I offer an alternative. In this case, student housing close to the east side power plant, the pig plants. Close to campus, with opportunity to reuse the waste heat from the power plant. I have not heard back from the university if my suggestion was not possible. We have heard Dr. Barron talk about how to make this university about energy. With this project in mind, I must assume that he meant how to consume as much as possible. Penn State University has chosen to make land available for a luxury student housing complex on the other side of town. Close to 1,000 students have to be transported through town to reach campus. Additional to that, there will be the social party weekend traffic with potential alcohol-related accidents, maybe death, not directly related to Penn State University, but definitely avoidable. After years now, we, and even some parts of the industrial sector, and currently even Penn State, admit that we have, in fact, global warming. Penn State has even a sustainability department and portray themselves proudly as leaders. And here the same Penn State University, out of their own will, attempts to sell land to an organization that is well known for Clean Water Act discrepancies. By the way, one of the CEOs of Toll is a Penn State alumnus. And don't white out Karen Peets in this process. On top of that, Toll is not building to any applaudable energy standards or quality required to mitigate global warming. Not to mention the inherent waste of energy and time of carting people around. About 2,000 people have signed a petition against this particular development on change.org. Newly elected supervisors in Ferguson Township have ran their elections on this project that puts our water supply in harm's way, pushing the old guard out.
1 minute.
So you can imagine that this issue and Penn State's role is on people's mind. With the Flint situation in Michigan, you are surely enabling a similar potential. This brings me on the investment strategy and return on investment, the ROI. At first glance, it seems like a winner. Buying something for a couple of $100,000 and selling it for $13.5 million, comparable to a fancy scoreboard. Only great if you as an organization do not feel responsible for the extended cost to the town people and the environment. The risk of damage to the water supply, the added strain on global warming, the frivolous waste of transportation energy. I do not imagine that it was really the leadership Dr. Barron had in mind. With all your knowledge, you have not learned how to not poison our water yet. So please offer a deal to the Toll to develop some luxury housing close by so that this ill-conceived project will not carry Penn State University's signature. And I hope that luxury housing, if built somewhere, will not cause segregation within Penn State between the poor and the rich. Thank you.
The University Park Undergraduate Association Speaker of the Assembly, Emily Miller, will be giving an update on major accomplishments.
Hi, everyone. So I'd like to start by saying that I have appreciated my 7 or 8 meetings updating you on various initiatives from my time as both the Academic Affairs Chair and the Speaker of the Assembly of the UPUA. My role is largely internal, and I oversee our 40 representatives in 4 standing committees. But this year, I really did want to be more involved with the board and update you on what we were doing. And so I really do appreciate those who have taken the time to get to know me and engage with me on some of our various initiatives. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I'm going to stick with talking about the budget, specifically what we've been doing as the undergraduate student government with the budget. We had put on the platform before the impasse even came about to recreate the Pennsylvania Association of State-Related Students. That actually became a very important tool over the last few months. We met in January to put together a plan of action. As some of you may know, each school wrote a letter to Governor Wolf and sent it. We publicly mailed those and had some media coverage. We were on the cover of the front page of the Center Daily Times, if you were able to see that. From there, we had a social media campaign tweeting a compilation of the school's letters, as well as a piece of legislation passed collectively by the past schools regarding the budget. Some stats for you: over 34,400 people saw the tweets, as well as 280 people retweeting them, including the PA House Dems, and the Pennsylvania GOP actually responded to one of them. But we are not done yet. Our Governmental Affairs Committee will be leaving voicemails for our friends in Harrisburg to let them know how this is affecting Penn State students. President McDonald, Vice President Ford, and myself, as well as our colleagues from the State Relateds, will be traveling to Harrisburg on March 2nd to support President Barron during the appropriations hearings. We will also visit legislators, and we'll be meeting with Secretary Rivera in the afternoon.
1 minute.
We will be bringing letters with us collected from our assembly and student organizations to deliver while we are there, also stating how this is affecting our university. The last thing I'd like to do is, this is my last moment to speak with you in my role. I'd like to stress the importance of student involvement in all areas of the university. Students have a different knowledge of the university, but when given the opportunity to serve as colleagues amongst various officials, help to change things like general education, their strategic plan, academic policy, and having a say in those things, we are not only learning, but our university is growing and improving based on the shared insight of all of its pieces. And that's the best way to move forward. And I hope that, even after my time here, that you all will consider that in your work as the board, how you can engage students and make sure that we are all part of the decision-making process. And it's been a pleasure speaking with all of you over the last year and a half. Thank you.
On behalf of the board, I want to thank our public comment speakers for taking the time to be with us today.